What is up? Welcome to this week's episode of Lambgoat's Vanflip podcast. Today, I am joined by my partner in Lambgoat, Dylan. He is on board for the podcast to help me, kind of help me, but he just has more insight to this particular guest, Brendon Small from Metalocalypse, and a plethora of other things. You created home movies and a bunch of other shows along the way. Welcome to the show, Brendon. How you doing?
I don't think I did a bunch of stuff, but yes, I did do those shows. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome, man. And again, Dylan, you can introduce yourself. Your first time on the podcast. Go ahead.
Yes. Hi, guys. Thanks for having me, Dave. It's good to be here. Good to meet you, Brendon, and I'm excited to talk about it. So let's go.
Yeah.
Long-time listener and producer, first-time caller. Cool.
Interesting enough, Metalocalypse gained a lot of fame. I mean, not only in the cartoon and adult, cartoon world, but in the music world. It became kind of like I don't want to say like a meme, but something that like a lot of the audience of metal really enjoyed. And I think it was cool that you guys actually eventually started playing out live or had people play out live. I guess I'll just ask with the basic question, like how did the idea for Metalocalypse come around? Because you already had been working on shows in general. So how did that idea formulate?
It's pretty crazy because I went to music school, and while I was at music school, I was kind of having a guitar identity crisis, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I was sitting there in music school, I was about to graduate, and I just thought, how the hell am I going to? Maybe my parents were right. How the hell am I going to do anything with this guitar? Like, what am I, an idiot? And I can't hide out any longer. So I was trying to find, like, I was trying to look at the future. I was trying to figure out, like, will I be a film composer or something like that? Or I ended up interning at Jingle Houses that summer in New York. The places where they write music for commercials and stuff. Mm-hmm. I worked at a couple different places. I worked at a movie theater on Broadway and 19th at the same time, too. But I lived in Queens, and my roommate was interning at Conan O'Brien. And I found myself wrapping cables and trying to finish my day so I could get over to 30 Rockefeller Plaza and go be a fly on the wall and see what they were doing in TV production. Yes. And my brain was just dragging my body around to places that were comedy related. Or also, like I said, I worked in a movie theater, so all I cared about was movies, guitar, and comedy. So it made me really think. And I was always interested in writing. I would write just for myself. Like I would just journal at a coffee shop, just to kind of something therapeutic about it, like if you go through a breakup or something like that, you start just writing because you're like, I don't know, what am I going to do? Like, I just broke up with someone, and then you read it and you go, oh yeah, you're an idiot, you screwed this up, you did something, whatever. You kind of have some kind of, if you're reading your own kind of thoughts, you have some objectivity in who you are just a little bit. And so my last year of music school, I started taking comedy really, really seriously, and as much practice as I would do on guitar, I would do as a writer, and I started taking class at Emerson College and working with a teacher there named Mike Bent, who was really encouraging. And I was really competitive because I was sitting there with a bunch of writing majors and I was a music major. And I really wanted to write funnier stuff than them. I want to write funnier, better, more exciting, more creative stuff. So I got very creative. I got very competitive. And then that would get me on stage doing stand-up, blah, blah, blah. And then Home Movies happens. And we really liked making the show. We really enjoyed the show. But the fans, there were no fans. Nobody cared about it. It would just air our original episodes. And they would just kind of like sit there and just tank. And it just didn't do well. So though we liked the show, we ended the show, and got to know what our final episode was. So we got to write the final piece and say goodbye to the show. We really liked you. And then later on, it got very popular. When it came on DVD, but before then it was just like I had to like prove people that I couldn't prove to people that I worked in television because no one had seen this TV show. So it was very much like not having a TV show to work on. And then during that whole time of home movies, I found myself just going back to metal shows and going to guitar-driven shows. So I'd go see Cannibal Corpse by myself, or I'd go see like Steve Vai or Joe Satriani. I was like starting to fall back in love with my guitar. Mm-hmm. So, and I was also just like going and seeing like Behemoth and like all these bands, and I was just, and then I met Tommy Blacha, and Tommy Blacha was the only guy that would go to these shows with me, and then we started doing a live comedy show called The Dumb Dildo Show. And it was one of the stupidest shows. It was myself, Tommy Blacha, an actor and a friend of mine named Andrew Donnelly, and an actor who's in tons of movies now, who's going to be in the new Scorsese movie, a guy named Pat Healy. So the four of us would do this stupid show, and we started doing kind of like Cannibal Corpse related sketches on stage. Like, what if Shelley the Machine Levine from Glengarry Glen Ross were George Corpse Grinder Fisher, and we do that whole lead thing, like I'm talking to Glengarry leads, so he would, and so we do all that stuff, and it was really fun to us. And I had like a development deal going on somewhere at the same time after home movies, and it was just kind of going nowhere. It was like a network one that was just took forever, and I would just complain about it. And then I was talking to Chris McCulloch, who's also known as Jackson Public, who's my friend and my neighbor, and he was listening to me complain about this other show, and he said, I don't understand. Here you are, you're complaining about the show, and it's not achieving liftoff, nothing's happened, it's too slow, whatever it is. And all you do is talk about heavy metal. Why aren't you doing that as a show? And it was like, I sat there in silence, and I couldn't believe that I was so stupid that I couldn't think of that myself. And I said, you're right, why the hell aren't I doing something like that? So I went over to Tommy, and I said, I think we should for a ever at Adult Swim, and I turned it around like an afternoon. Maybe we should try to do this thing. So that's how it all started. Talk to the network, and they were like, "Oh, cool, green light. Let's do it. Let's write it up. And I was like, I can't write it up because I don't know anything about it just yet. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down with my guitar and I'm going to start kind of figuring out what it sounds like. Because if I think we can get the band part up and running, then maybe we'll have something. But if it's if it's generic and inspecific and it isn't, then who cares? So we kept on. Then we were like working with a team of people. John Schnepp, who passed away not too long ago, was an important part of the early days too, where he was kind of developing the look of the characters. And the first look was just not the right look. It was just like these loopy, strange kind of hair metal characters. And I was like, okay, this is a good thing to talk about because these people have been wearing the same jeans for about 6 months, the same T-shirts. They smell bad and they can hurt you. That's what we're talking about. There's probably a knife in one of their pockets covered with blood. This is who this band is. So it all, and then I heard that they were doing 20 episode orders. So I got, again, very ambitious, and I thought, can we do something where we have can we get 30 episode ideas and write them down, and just even if there's just one sentence, if they're just jokes, just 30 jokes that each one of you read and go, ha, I see how that's funny, ha, I see how that. So all that stuff kind of comes together, and Adult Swim was really establishing itself as this really cool counterculture kind of late night lunacy, and I was really excited. So yeah, because I was a big fan of Space Ghost and big fan of Aqua Teen and all that stuff. So I thought this show is probably going to fit in with those shows. Home Movies was what it is, which is literally a redheaded stepchild. So we're like, and by the way, not only that, here's an important thing. The heavy metal audience doesn't really get anything for themselves. They don't get anything for themselves. True. Everyone's got nice stuff except for the heavy metal people. We had Headbangers Ball for a little while. It was great. It was cool, but we didn't have much more. So I know that the heavy metal audience is persnickety. They're also really they're like, fuck you. That's a really important part about that. They're protective. But if they're in on the whole project, if they're in at the ground level, then I think this is going to work out. So how do we do that? Let's talk about that. So that's when we started thinking, let's get Metallica in the first episode. Let's talk to Cannibal Corpse. Let's talk to King Diamond. Let's talk to Enslaved. Let's talk to Michael Amott from Arch Enemy. And let's talk to everybody that's Scott Ian from Anthrax, all these people. And let's have them be funny. Let's have them be part of the joke. Let's have them be part of the world. And let's do something that's kind of a love letter to this genre, but also kind of something that's about ultimately celebrityism, which is not really heavy metal. It's something else that's kind of like, what if the biggest entertainment act on earth is an extreme metal band?
Yeah.
And so what's the logic of that world? What's the economy look like? How do you build that world? All that stuff. So all those things are kind of coming together, and we're having a lot of fun developing it. And we're doing all of our reading and tons of documentaries on any band that's ever existed. I watched everything from Aerosmith's Pump to what is the Dandy Warhol's documentary? Do you know that one? It is called, it's a one-word name. It'll come to me.
No.
But it's a really good one. So everything that had to do with the band. Oh, And also, Metallica's Some Kind of Monster came out, which I think is one of the most amazing documentaries of all time. So all that stuff is happening, and it's in the zeitgeist. Heavy metal is growing anyway, you know, and so we kind of just kind of rode that same wave, and that's how the whole thing started.
Yeah, I definitely one of the things I do enjoyed about the show and the movie, because obviously, well, not obviously, no one, I don't know if anyone knows, but you have a movie that's, by the time airs, has already been out. So the Metalocalypse movie is already been released. But one thing I definitely liked about the universe that you've created for the band is that they are like some giant K-pop star. You know, the whole world is waiting on their every whim. So that's humorous in itself. But also, like, you know, I often wonder, like, will one day a band reach, you know, even half that success? Well, I mean, there are bands that, like Metallica and some other bands that you've named, that are, you know, gargantuan in size as far as popularity goes, but like nothing kind of like Metalocalypse in their universe.
Well,
you know?
I mean, with a pop band, yeah, Taylor Swift is doing,
Oh, of course,
you know,
yeah.
is recharging the economy, and it's almost like a Metalocalypse headline, you know? So yeah, will extreme metal ever do that? I don't know. I mean, the other thing about this whole thing is that I wouldn't have really gotten into heavy metal had I not had a friend that lived down the street who not only showed me how to play guitar, but also showed me who Black Sabbath really was, who Slayer was, like, really, like, who showed me who Metallica was, who showed me who, like, you know, Fate's Warning and all kinds of like bands, you know. He showed me everything, and not everybody has that person in their life.
Yeah,
and
true.
so we thought, like, this is going to be a thing, hopefully, that gets people excited about guitars and heavy metal. And we took the guitars very seriously, and got all the, you know, the fingering's accurate on the show, or in the ballpark.
Oh, the
enough,
animation,
but,
you mean? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, where you'd see like Josie and the Pussycats or something, where someone's just strumming or playing with their fingers, and there's, you know, so we're like, so every episode I'd sit with my guitar and I'd film myself and give a little animation, like, okay, the right hand's doing this, watch, it's not moving much, the left hand's doing this riff, that's guitar A, and this is Toki's part, and this is guitar B, and they harmony, put them together, and it's a guitar part thing. So we would do all that stuff, and I mean, it's the same amount of work really as animation, it's just a little bit more specific. So all that stuff. So that world is, yeah, it is a world where if you don't release a record, the economy tanks. If it was expected and they say, no, we're not going to do it, the economy tanks, because there's a lot riding on. And just like with Taylor Swift, the economy is actually getting stronger. It's so crazy.
It's weird that the entertainment world can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, something's funny in the new movie. You kind of touch on, you talk the celebrity of these guys, and at one point they kind of go and look at themselves online and start looking at articles that are written about them, and obviously, like, you know, bands not recommended that you do that. That you
it's a tragic endeavor. Yeah.
Is that something you try to avoid yourself?
It's a tragic endeavor, and particularly in this movie, where me, you know, the thing is that, like, yeah, that's the right move, is to avoid anybody talking about you at all, just because it's good, bad, or indifferent. You just, like, you're either kind of like sticking to your guns artistically, or you're listening to other people weigh in and they're making the story or something like that. So I think it's okay to not really check in on that stuff and be too present, you know. But yeah, that's the era of that. So again, go back to like year 2005 when we started developing the show. There was another looming writer strike, and I wanted to be a professional writer. I really took writing seriously, and I wanted to be a writer on television and get paid. And then this new thing called the reality show was telling us, where, like, you know, even Ozzy Osbourne was part of this, but like Hilton or the Kardashians or Ozzy were all kind of reduced to these inept celebrities, and that's what you're going to get more of, you know, just lots of these shows, you know. So we wanted to make a show about a bunch of inept celebrities who didn't know what day it is, don't know what time it is, and don't know how to use a doorknob. They're just idiots who are being shuffled around by their management from place to place, and why are we glorifying them? What's the point? But they happen to be heavy metal, so we get to celebrate heavy metal while lambasting these dipshits, these 5 dipshits that are just kind of totally self involved, you know. And so when we come to this movie, we go, okay, from corporate to religion, right? That's the big things. From, like, they're starting off as a money-making machine and they're throwing it all away to become because music is somewhat spiritual, right? So you can argue that that's part of the thing. And we start out with the whole show starts out from the servants' quarters by their chef like bringing them food. And so we're following the chef and tracking along again, trying to make this grandiose entrance of these total that you're going to find out a couple seconds later are total dipshits. So it's again being the lords of the manor. So that's kind of the whole trajectory of the show as well.
Interesting. I know you've kind of like just shit on the band, you know, the guys in the band, but I would like to know, like, because there are some, and again, I don't think that you've based the actual personalities off of anybody, but there are like resemblances for certain members. Like, let's say Nathan reminds me of Corpse Grinder, and you know, you saying you went to Cannibal Corpse shows. Are they mimicked?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Are they mimicked, like just visually off of?
Yeah, we get this question a lot, and the one person that we really say is like, this is definitely the presence and the kind of embodiment of Corpse Grinder as a frontman definitely came. Yeah. Nathan Explosion is definitely, and Corpse Grinder knows this too. That this is like he influenced greatly. Just the power. Like when you see Cannibal Corpse live, you're thinking there are 5 serial killers on stage singing about murder, and there's nothing more intense, and that's what it is. That's what it feels like. And he's got a magical presence. He's powerful. That guy's a great frontman. So I think he's one of the great heavy metal frontmen out there. And everybody else was like, you know, William Murderface.
Yeah, who's he mimicked
exactly.
off of?
Who is he? Like, you know, there were some talks about like a lot of people think he's kind of influenced by something, but that look and that thing, that countenance that came from the mind of John Schnepp. So I can't say that
that's good.
Anything else.
The other two guys with the longer hair, I can't remember everyone's name, but the balding guys.
And Toki. So those are also like some people think it was Alexi Liejo from and rest in peace, Alexi. He was a great guy, but even like, you know, John Schnepp didn't know who that person was. So, and then Pickles he was a young, handsome guy. Then we took his hair away and like gave him like a dread over and made him just a little bit more unique looking. So his attitude was like, I mean, initially, like I was doing kind of a Mark Borchardt impression from American Movie, if you've ever seen that documentary, which is a really great documentary. And then Squiskar was like, in my mind, it was like more of like the Swedish guitar shred god. So like it's more like Yngwie Malmsteen, who I loved, and I'd read so many articles where he's got a lot of bravado and a lot of gravitas, and he has a lot to say, and it's his way or the highway, and I thought that's good for Squiskar. And then Toki, we just thought more of like there's kind of maybe more of a class struggle between, or just a little bit more of competition between Norway and Sweden too. So we have the world's fastest guitar player, he really isn't, and the world's second fastest in the same band. What does that do to your dynamic? What does it do for your work every single day? And Murderface, the metaphor that really showed up, and it kind of lands in this movie, is that when I started listening to heavy metal, you couldn't hear the bass. You couldn't hear what Jason Newsted was doing on And Justice for All. You can't even hear it in Pantera that well. You can't hear it that well. It's there. It's there. I love the bass guitar. I love playing it. But it's not present all the time in the mix. So what does that do to a person who isn't being heard?
Yeah.
It makes them kind of like be louder and be more kind of aggressive from moment to moment in life, and all fueled by self-loathing. So that was the kind of the blueprint for Murderface. So, and Nathan was like the quarterback, and we're trying to figure out who he is. He's this kind of like underneath this thing. And by the way, I don't talk shit about them. They're idiots. That's what the band is, and that's what your comedy heroes have to be. From,
I know, but I didn't want you to like.
Keaton to
I didn't want to like reference like Nathan and George, and like us being like he's an idiot. You know what I'm saying? But that's why I was prefacing that.
George Corpse Grinder is not an idiot, and he's not the person I'm writing for. I'm writing for Nathan Explosion, and he is an idiot, and he's a figment of my imagination, and so is Toki and the rest of them. So my lead comedy characters are idiots, and they have to be, or I don't get to make the comedy work. So so that's part of it. So that's all that stuff. So you ask yourself, like, what does it take? I need 2 guitar players because I like guitar harmonies. I love Iron Maiden, and I love Brian May from Queen, and I like all that stuff. So I want to be able to use the guitar as a harmonic device and a melodic device. And the drummer, I thought, was like, oh, can he be like, you know, Roger Taylor, or can he be like Dave Grohl, like somebody who's already had a band and this is their second band, you know, or Roger Taylor who sings and plays drums is an important component to the blueprint of the music itself. So all that stuff I was thinking about, and then just kind of going psychologically, what is this? What is a band? A band is a group of roommates who are not bound by love, but by circumstance. He plays bass, I don't. So you're in the band. And a tour bus is a traveling roommates. And what is your relationship with roommates? Remember having roommates? If you have one, you can't really say, hey, do you mind using a coaster? You're fucking up my coffee table. That's not even a conversation you can really have because it's not an intimate relationship, you know? It's not like having a husband or a wife where you can go, hey, can you just take your clothes off the kitchen table for a second? If a roommate happened, you guys would probably kill each other. So you're at a distance, and this is also about how masculinity and how I grew up and how conversation works in the world of masculinity, which is everyone's a fucking loud football coach and everyone's silent and interpreting an emotional center or vulnerability deep inside of them in a heavy metal world is a really tricky path to negotiate. And that to me is something that's worth exploring because we don't know.
You brought something up in our interview we did with you 15 years ago. One of our writers did an interview with you, and you talked about how everything, just relating how everything is brutal. Your girlfriend breaking up with your girlfriend's brutal. Just like
that's the philosophy of brutality. So this is an important kind of like part of the show too, which is that you bring up. So thanks for bringing it up. It is the philosophy of brutality. What is the ultimate brutality? Death, yes, or dying, being in the throes of death. But there's so many things in everybody's life that are very, very brutal, but not as brutal, like humidity, going to the dentist.
Oh, I know that.
Being broken up with, having to break up with somebody, diarrhea, being hungover, going to work, flying coach. There's a million things in the world that just suck, and they're totally brutal. And they're not as bad as death, but they're pretty close to some of us.
Yeah. I definitely want to say, I mean, like, even as a fan, I've watched it. I didn't realize the show had come out in 2005, and it's been that long, man. That's
It came out in
yesterday.
2006.
Yeah, but
we started
like
developing
yesterday.
it in 2005. Yeah.
Interesting. But I mean, like, we're obviously going to change topics, but just to touch base on the characters and like the universe that you guys created for the band and stuff like that. I mean, you kind of you nailed it. It's so weird, you know what I mean? And it's hilarious, and the music, I mean, is better than, I don't know, some bands that are out currently that are still currently touring. You know what I mean? And that's I'm not trying to shit on anyone or anything like that, but I mean, you guys.
You're trying to compliment me. You're almost there.
Yeah,
it's okay. You don't have to.
You guys really killed it. And I mean, part of me wants to know, like, because obviously you started playing guitar at an early age. You were wildly influenced by metal music and bands and stuff like that. Like, when you had the opportunity to, like, tour full time with Metalocalypse, like, what holds you back from that? Obviously, I know your
why don't I do
your
that
TV
for a living?
career, your TV career and all that other stuff, and acting and voice acting and stuff like that. I know that is, but I mean, like, as a kid, you know, as like a 12-year-old Brandon, like, you have to tell them, like, oh, we write sick ass music, but we just don't tour full time.
I know. Yeah, it's funny. No, it's really crazy. It's I know that there's a part of me that gets bored easily, and I think, you know, just having a lot of jobs on the show is really important to me. Plus, I also want to get a kind of a singular idea out there, from the music to how the characters talk to what the world looks like. And again, that whole world and a huge part of developing the show is working with not just John Schnepp, but Titmouse, the animation company, Chris Pronowski and Shannon Pronowski and Antonio Canobio were really important parts, because they were just doing commercials and music videos back then. And we came to them and we said, let's turn this production place into a TV production place. So that was part of it. But yeah, the show, in order to do it, you have to, like, really be the last person standing every day, and again, like, everybody goes home after the end of the season, but I take my guitars and my amps and I go into a studio and try to elongate these songs or make them into bigger pieces. So you just, it's the same thing, you know. It's storytelling, and these are the elements. The songs are world building. I start talking about, like, there's a whole world of Mermaider and subterranean underwater crazy stuff that just happened because of the second episode, and I kept going with it. And I thought, this is interesting. Going to the water, Mermaider, all these things. And so the idea was, to me, when the music is being made, it gets made in this little room that I'm in, this studio. This is where I've made a lot of the Dethklok records.
It's a
It's
fine
just a
looking
little
studio,
closet.
Brendon.
It's like I have a dog back there and a couple guitars, and
Perfect.
that's it. At some point, it seems like the way this works is like it's almost like being in deep cover. It's like Serpico, like you have to live amongst the cops and see what's going on. But that's what touring was for me, and it just makes the when I'm making music, when I'm singing, when I'm doing lyrics or anything, I'm not really deciding. Dethklok's deciding for me, and they're just asking me to kind of not fuck it up, basically. And that's how I think of it: is that I'm still in character, like you know, when you're writing a script, you're improvising the character slowly and then tailoring it and you know fine tuning it and all that stuff. But it's all improv, and it's all just like, how does this make the show cooler, better? And honestly, what we talk about in making this movie and making the show all the time is how can we make it cooler? How can we make it cool? Let's make it cool. Let's make it something that you can kind of like get into, even though it's also like a total dipshit comedy at the same time of inept idiots. And but how do you also make it cool? How do you ride the line? And that's what the live tour is. And I couldn't do it all the time, especially back then, because it was just like a monumental amount of work that I enjoyed doing. But it was also like it was a lot just trying to keep. Also, you know, you go through a season and you need to get the next season up and running, but you also need to put a record out in the middle, and you also need a tour. So you're in production and you're touring at the same time, and it gets pretty hairy around that time. It's just like the time is like, okay, I got to sell the next show, I got to get on the radio, do Nathan Explosion's voice, and I have a script coming in that is not in good shape that I have to fix. Plus, an animatics just came in that I also have to give notes on, and then I got to be on stage. And then I was hoping to take a nap. That's not going to happen. So, okay, let's keep going. So it was like that for a long time. And I was like, this project is getting too crazy. It's getting too crazy.
Yeah.
And that was the problem of the show, is like, how do you do it all at the same time? But at the same time, when it all lands, when you get the synergy of a new season or a new movie and a record and blah, 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 and a tour all happening at the same time, it's a really nice way to promote and also just go put into practice your guitar playing, all the stuff that you were interested in from when you were 14. So I like doing it all. Would I do it all forever? Maybe. I don't know. It's crazy. It's like I feel like the guy from Mary Poppins. Like every day your job is just a little bit different, and that to me is the only way I can do it, you know.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing every day, I don't know if I would last.
I agree. So I would not to change gears a little bit, but you were talking about 2005, 2006, and around that same time frame, you had a spread in Playgirl, and I just kind of, you know, want to chat with you about that. So how did that? I mean, it was a comedy issue. So how did that come to light, and like how, you know, were you nervous about it, or how nervous about the photo shoot and how it would be perceived?
It was okay. So it started out. There's a magazine called Bust Magazine, and Bust Magazine was all written by women, and they had like they did like a comedy issue, and then and then a lot of those writers ended up working on Playgirl. So they were all like punk rock, cool writers that were working on Bust Magazine, and some transferred to Playgirl, and they were like, let's do something crazy. And I was like, look. It's a dare, right? So it's some kind of like comedy dare, and I wasn't. You can't see any of my junk or anything.
No,
like
yeah.
that. But if you were to be able to, I would have painted it like King Diamond.
Yeah, great.
But you know, it's funny. The whole thing kind of comes out, and it only comes up in like interviews like this, except my mother. At one point, she calls me and she said, "You know, I got the issue that you're in." I was like, why, mother, would you get the issue where I'm naked in it? And she's like, well, I was interested. And I was like, she said, I'm your mother. And I was like, okay, all right.
For the articles.
And I said, well, what'd you think? And she goes, well, I didn't get to it because, frankly, I didn't realize that they were showing erect penises these days. And I was like, yeah. So there were like zero repercussions other than. And
you know, I was around William Street at that time, and it was a hot topic. Around
it was, but it's also like Aziz Ansari was in it too. So none of us were male models or anything like that. You know, it was like
the photos are great. The photos are great and very funny.
They're pretty silly. I have like I grew out a mustache for it, and I think I was in better shape beforehand. But I thought, I'm gonna I'm not gonna monitor what I eat before because I
Oh
think
yeah,
it'd be better if I'm a little bit fatter.
comedic effect. Yes, always thinking
Yeah,
about
yeah,
the
yeah.
laugh.
There's
I get
nothing
it. I get it.
funny about ripped abs.
Um,
Yeah.
you got broken into a couple years ago. Did you ever? I mean, we reported on that,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But did you ever kind of like get any of that, stolen goods back?
No.
No.
No, and it wasn't a couple years ago. It was almost exactly a year ago
Oh
because
shit.
I think it was right before the Adult Swim Fest in 2022, and that was like August, seriously, August 7th, I think. So
Yeah.
A
today's
year ago. Holy crap.
so it was a year ago, and it was this very room,
Mm.
and our house was under construction, and I was grabbing some guitars out of this room and taking them to the Dethklok rehearsal so we could go and play this thing. And there were a bunch of people like taking trash out of this house and stuff, and we have it on camera before that some of them were kind of sneaking around this area. And I can't say that like I've got no proof because
Mm.
later on someone killed all of our cameras and robbed me. And I had really, really good guitars. If you saw my post, you know that they're
Yeah.
pretty unique. Some of them were prototypes. One of them was a gift that Joe Satriani gave me.
And they haven't popped up on the. They haven't popped up
They're
anywhere.
not, no. I mean, the other thing is, as that's happening, I'm not only producing a movie and a record and a score at the same time, but I have to go and do a live show, a one-off. And the one-offs are treacherous, by the way. They're so difficult because it's a full show and you get one shot to do it right, and they're gonna film it with like 20 cameras, and you're like just going, oh, don't make any mistakes. And meanwhile, I'm on the flight, basically trying not to cry, because oh, my college guitar that I like did all this home movie stuff that I like put my name in. I
Mm.
whittled my name into the headstock. It was like a Wormouth guitar, and I loved it. Gone. So you have to go. All right, show must go on. Let's go do the show. And I had enough guitars to get the job done. And since then, I've bought a couple more. And I still play like most of the record is this guitar that was the survivor, like one of the lone survivors, which is this my Epiphone.
Mhm.
It's called a Ghost Horse, and it's this guitar with like 24 frets and a whammy bar. So this is like my main guitar on the new Dethklok record. Though I would have switched around. And yeah, so I had to like rethink and find a new way to record. But I think some of that's good news because it just gets you out of your safety zone.
Yeah.
And again, I still have my fingers, so I can still play guitar. It's just I can't play those guitars, and they
Yeah.
didn't show up. And I think I contacted a lot of the main, like, all the guitar stores around here, and again, like there's a prototype, there's a Thunder Horse prototype there. It was
Mm.
just like my main guitar. It was the best. It was best out of the whole litter, and it's gone. They're all gone. They're all gone, and I didn't cry. I held it in
You could if you
until
wanted to, man. We would have been
no,
okay
I
with
know.
that.
But I would have cried on stage, I think, and I don't think the audience needed to see me trying to like do a death metal voice and also just sobbing at the same time.
Yeah.
But when I came back, when I was going back to the airport, I was like had my sad little luggage, and I was just kind of rolling through the people passing by, and I was in this daze, and I cried for about like two inhales and exhales, and then I was like, okay, I got to go back to work. I got to make this
Yeah.
movie. I got to finish all this stuff. I can't feel sorry for myself, but it sucks. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, it sucks a lot.
Show must go on.
But the fact that it's only been a year, that leaves plenty of time for them to pop back up, in a pawn shop somewhere or on eBay or what I mean. There's definitely
It's
some
really
place.
funny you're saying all this because there I was in the Dethklok rehearsal like the day before my guitars were stolen, and somebody else said we were talking about Buckethead who got his guitar stolen too.
Mhm.
And I said what you said, which is, oh, it's a funny thing how these guitars somehow find their way back to their owners years later, and they come back together. And I said that, then a Cavalier, like, because it is because you want to put a nice spin on it somehow. It's just
Yeah.
you're compelled to go, oh, it's not so bad.
Brutal.
And the truth
Yeah,
is,
I was
like,
gonna say, to
it
quote
isn't so
Nathan.
bad. To be robbed and all that stuff, it could be worth. It could be worse. But also, I wish it didn't happen.
No, yeah.
And maybe I'll see those guitars again. Maybe I won't. But like I said, I think ultimately they're these cool, expensive trinkets that you are just very used to, and you got to go and kind of like you got to keep living. You got to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
So That's
Yep.
my attitude. And if I linger on it too long, I probably will get upset. But I don't think
Well,
I don't
I
think it'll
mean,
do anything.
I know you don't want to wait this long or anything like that, but recently, I don't remember the band or who it was, but someone stole a guitar from somebody, and then felt bad enough about it. 15 years later, they returned it. So all hope is not lost. So, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. What are you gonna do? I know. Yeah. I hear you. I appreciate that. I
no, okay.
appreciate it all.
I want to switch gears a little bit off of Metalocalypse and Dethklok and stuff like that because you've done a lot. Um, about 13 years ago, you did a video with Chris Cornell and Soundgarden for
Yeah.
Black Rain. How was that? How was that experience working with the band and Chris and all that?
It was incredibly cool. It was one of the coolest things in the world because I love Soundgarden, and I couldn't believe they broke up when they were still making such great music. And I was just like, what? Everyone's still alive, and you're not. And then Chris, I was like, oh, okay, whatever they're gonna do, they're gonna do. But the way, so I got a call from Ollie at Adult Swim, and she goes, "Hey, Soundgarden's management is asking about you because they have a new song." I go, wait a minute, wait a minute. Soundgarden has a new song? And so that's how I found out Soundgarden was getting back together, was this phone call where they were asking me to direct a music video.
Oh, nice.
So that's one of the coolest calls I've ever gotten in my life. And then later on, like cut to like later on that night, me on the phone with Kim Thale. And it would start a friendship. Just like we talked for like 3 hours, just about movies, about guitars, about I just bugged him about Soundgarden, about the about Soundgarden's sound, about like he's like, yeah, everybody says Black Sabbath, but no, 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 we were trying to copy the Melvins.
Interesting. Yeah.
Nirvana was trying to copy the Melvins. Everybody in Seattle at that time thought there was nothing cooler than the Melvins, and whatever happened, it ended up being Soundgarden for us. It ended up being Nirvana for Nirvana, and all the other bands. And so I talked to him about his guitars. I talked to him about his playing. We talked about Frank Zappa. And we talked about like monster movies, and so he was kind of pitching me this idea, and I was like, oh, this is cool. This is cool. And we had a good budget because Guitar Hero was
Hmm.
financing it, and it was really cool. So I was like, oh, cool. So that was an important part because I learned a little bit more about animation because we had a really great compositor that joined us for that, and that just made me understand how important compositing is to getting a cool look from animation, which would eventually go back to our movie about cool compositing, getting cooler shots, all that stuff. And that was kind of part of that. So after that, Soundgarden would play live, and I would see them. I get to talk to Chris Cornell about being a vocalist and why he sounds so great. And oh, by the way, the song is called Black Rain, and it's such a cool song. It's one of the coolest Soundgarden songs that I hadn't heard, and it was an unfinished track from like the Bad Motorfinger sessions. So going way back, they kind of got it in shape and they played. And I just remember listening in this room to that track and thinking, my God, like it's bass guitar, drums, and a vocalist, and two guitars, but their sound is so huge, and they're bigger than the sum of their parts. And Soundgarden and Matt Cameron, Ben Shepherd, all those guys are so cool and such great musicians. And then my wife, one of our early dates, I took her to go watch King Animal get mixed, like in Pasadena. So we sat with Kim, and anytime we go to Seattle, we have dinner with Kim, and I talked to him earlier this summer, and we'll just have long conversations and just chat about, hey, did you see this movie? Did you see that movie? Let's talk. What do you got? What are you doing? Did you get anything? What's happening? Were you playing or what are you doing? And so he's in town, we'll have dinner. When I'm in town, we'll have dinner. It's the coolest thing in the world. He's such a cool guy.
Awesome.
And just like, I always thought Kim Thale would be like the tough, scary guy, but he is just so silly and so nice.
Yeah, it's like another corpse grinder kind of person. I got
Yeah.
two more real quick questions, and I'm going to hand it off to Dylan because he's probably got a couple more like, things that he's interested in back in the day. You mentioned earlier that you called a couple people to be on the show in the beginning of the series and everything. Was there anyone that turned you down?
I think some people, most of them were interested because they saw what this was, and it's also what we're asking them to do is be funny, and so what we would do is we would see who was going to be in town, and we thought, okay, maybe we can grab you, we can get a runner to pick you up and come and do, like, seriously, it shouldn't take more than 20 minutes.
Like the podcast used to be. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we would get people to like agree, or someone else would vouch for us or something like that. And then there's some people that we would try to get, or like, some of my guitar heroes, like I reached out and they're like, yeah, that sounds cool. And then it would kind of, something would happen or fizzle out, or they'd go on tour and wouldn't be in production. So that would be happening, but nobody said to us, like, absolutely not. Like, some people that we never got that I wish we'd gotten were like Dave Mustaine, where I talked to him about it in person and stuff. But some of those we just never got. But the guys we got were really cool, and I wish we could have gotten more.
100%.
Because everyone has it in them to sort it out. So we're working with actors all day, or we're working with actors like Mark Hamill and Malcolm McDowell, even Werner Herzog, and then Slash comes in. And we got to kind of talk him into letting go and being silly and all that stuff. And Billy Gibbons comes in and he's kind of ready to go. And then everyone's got a different kind of thing, and then once they start feeling silly or stupid, that means we're on the right track, and that's usually how it happens.
Awesome. My last one, and it's not really Metalocalypse or Dethklok related.
Yeah.
You did a cameo on one of my favorite shows, Frisky Dingo, as Brent Trent, voice acting.
Oh.
So, I mean, you're the only person that I've kind of been able to come in contact with that has any kind of reference to that show, or even worked on that show, was a part of that show. So my question to you is there ever going to be a resurgence of Frisky Dingo? Because I loved that show much more than what it eventually would kind of come to be, like Archer and whatnot. But Frisky Dingo was just a great show. So is there ever going to be like a resurgence of that, or what?
I really don't know. That's like an Adam Reed question, I think. And by the way, years ago, I had such a funny night with Adam Reed, where like it was at a Comic-Con or something, and we just like stayed up late and drank too much and just got kicked out of a place. He's so funny. He's so naturally gifted. And I remember, I think like Dave Willis did that original part, and somebody was like, oh, we got too much Dave Willis. Get somebody else to do it. So I remember like being in my old apartment, like screaming and turning purple, and it was like a hot summer day where I had to turn all the air off and everything and scream and bellow, and my neighbors were like, what are you doing? And but I recorded all in my apartment, my little kind of makeshift Pro Tool set little area. But that's all I remember from that. And I just remember like he was so funny, and that's why like I think his shows are always funny, is because it's a funny guy with good comedy taste. And
Archer's not a bad show. I'm just saying there's characters on Frisky Dingo that are great.
And Archer's got John Benjamin, who
of course.
I worked with for a long time on movies too. Yeah.
Hilarious. All right.
So that's all I got. I don't have any inside information.
That's all. I was just kind of, hoping you may have some insight, but that's okay. Dylan, go ahead and ask him whatever you.
Yeah, I mean that takes us back to H. John Benjamin doing Coach, on home movies. Back to those days. You've been working a long time on all that stuff. Picked up by Adult Swim, came over there, kind of started Metalocalypse, worked on The Perfect Hair forever. A little known show, by the way.
Yeah.
That one out. So back then, things were really about getting a show picked up, putting out a DVD, getting sales on that, having the network pay you. What is that? And then, we had the writer's strike, and Cartoon Network picked up, some reality shows here and there. They had a Andrew WK show. I don't know if you ever.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That one where he blew shit up with kids, which was funny. So the industry has changed over time. What does it look like now? Like, when you have a show, you have a property, you're pitching a show, like, are you pitching to networks? Are you pitching to Netflix? Like, how has it changed over the years?
Yeah, I mean, it's...
What stops you from putting out yourself on YouTube or anything like that, too?
Yeah, that's a good question. The truth is that, realistically, I can only do stuff that I'm really interested in, that really like I want to do. And Metalocalypse and home movies together are like two of the best jobs I've ever had. Metalocalypse meaning that, in that I get to start the process and end the process. I get to write it, and then I get to finish the music, and I get to act somewhere in the middle. So it's the ultimate job for me. And there's some other jobs where, I'll do pilots, and I'll do pitches, and I'll do some stuff, and I think the big difference, what Adult Swim and Mike Lazzo really gave to the world was a very unique place run by a singular kind of ideology, where you go to every streamer right now, and even you go to pitch for every streamer, and you say, "What are you guys looking for?" And they go, "Well, we kind of do everything a little bit." And so, but Adult Swim had something. They're like, if you want to be in this club, you got to sell this and this and this. You got to like make a funny and weird and crazy show. And it really was great because of the hard work that they did to build this plot of land, all these other shows got to exist. And they had to sit there and fight for it for the amount of decades that it was on the air. Or before like all the streamers and all that stuff happened. But it's different because I don't think there is that thing anymore. There isn't that like, plot of land that wants to do kind of weirdo cartoons and stuff. They kind of happen, and a lot of people try it and realize there's something missing in a lot of them. Or they're overthought, or the taste of the show just isn't adding up at the end or something. So, but pitching's still the same thing. You still got to like, the whole thing is like, comedy and know-how and all that stuff. It's all kind of like, it's all like, you can do that if you can be a good salesperson first. And so like, you have to like pitch and like really say like, this is, and again, Adult Swim was the kind of show where people would say like, look, I will pick this up and I will be accountable for this show. Where right now in a lot of networks, nobody wants to be accountable for anything. Nobody wants to lose their job over a show. So it's a really tricky place in creativity. So I don't know. I think that after this strike and everything, the landscape will probably change. I think streaming will, in order to kind of continue some kind of good faith agreement or whatever, I think it's going to start turning into TV again. And TV, I understand, because it is about ratings. It is about overnights. TV back in, especially in Adult Swim, we would have to like, our show would air on a Sunday night at like 12:45, a.m. And then we would look to see if we had jobs on Monday by looking at the overnights, and you'd see like, oh, did we hold our numbers? Are they good enough? That's the question. And right now in like Netflix and the world of streaming, everyone's metrics are hidden. You can't even tell. So that's why people are striking right now too, because it's either they don't want to let you know how much power you have, or nobody's watching anything and it looks stupid and everybody looks bad. So, but that's how TV was born. That's how like, the shows that everyone agreed on were made, was that,
What was a finite good number? And you don't have to say a specific number for your show per se, but like you were saying, hold over the audience or whatever for the evening shift, late night shift, whatever. But because Cartoon Network was, mainly geared towards kids, like how much leniency did you guys have at that late night Adult Swim situation to where like, you could have bad weeks or bad days,
Well, that's the idea. In TV, you can't have bad days or weeks, or your days are numbered. Like, really, you can't like just like do that. Like, even like, I think about Seinfeld all the time because I think it's a really great show, and I think it really found its footing later on. But it really was also pretty good when it started out. Its ratings weren't huge, but they were not bad, and they were trying to grow this Thursday night show. And then everyone started going, wait a minute, this show's really got its shit together around season 4, and the whole world, it became part of the zeitgeist, and their numbers kept going bigger and bigger and bigger. But those were like in the millions, like 11 million on a Thursday night. That's a big deal. I remember when we were on UPN with Home Movies, we got kicked off of the network for only having a 2.4 million share, which is like 2.4 million people watched this show and also tuned out of it. But nowadays, like when you see like the ending of Succession had like 2.4 million viewers, something like that, you realize those are the numbers that would get you kicked off of a network in the old days. Now it's like pretty good numbers. So anywhere around there, and like even lots of people are watching TV, and lots of people are watching TV late at night. So Adult Swim, not just our show, but Adult Swim alone was basically the number one thing. It was beating out all the late night shows. Mm-hmm. Nobody was watching like Conan or Fallon or any of those things. They were watching Adult Swim on weekend nights or Sunday nights, or even streaming throughout the week. So he found like what Saturday Night Live found, which was like a weird little patch of time with weird people that were flying their weird flags everywhere, and the audience were also weird and excited or have insomnia.
it was a fun time. Like that time, Aqua Teen Hunger Force was big. They put out a movie back then,
Hmm.
and
I remember. Yeah.
William Street just carried that weirdness through. Like in The Office, we
Yeah.
had Bone Crusher come through, that rapper. He came through. P. Lander Z played a show in The Office. I mean, it was a beautiful time to be there. They were kind of
Yeah.
in their own little world, in their own little studio. So it was a good time. It was like it felt like a little bit of magic back then.
Yeah. I completely agree. Yeah. I agree. And like I said, I don't think you're gonna find that right now. Maybe someone will build an app or something that that will get popular.
You remember
Or
Super Deluxe? Did you ever
yeah, I
get
remember Super Deluxe.
shows
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
they
don't know.
tried things like that.
I think the same thing that's happening is happening though. Is that you've got to excite somebody inside of a network that your idea is worth taking to the finish line, and then you've got to hopefully advertise it enough and see if there's an audience. The thing about Metalocalypse was good, bad, or indifferent. There is an audience that is not being spoken to right now, and that's this heavy metal crowd.
Yeah.
So they already
Do you think
exist. Yeah.
do you think metal has grown since then, since Metalocalypse first came on the scene?
Um, I don't know. I don't really I'm not I don't follow the numbers of like what heavy metal is doing from moment to moment. I know it's always really important to me, and there's a lot of really cool inspired stuff coming out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always, really. Yeah.
You mentioned kind of working on stuff you love, and something tangentially metal related, was you worked on the soundtrack for Black Knight, pinball
Oh
machine,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because I love that pinball machine, that whole
Oh, you
series. I
do.
love all those
Yeah.
machines, and I played that when it came out like 2019. What was that like working on
Well,
that?
that was me and Scott Ian from Anthrax in this very room.
Mm.
Just like basically our friends at Stern Pinball, Jody Denkberg, who's like the artist relations person there, who used to be part of Crank Amps, which is the amp company that Dimebag endorsed before he died. And I met Jody there, and Jody went from job to job for a little while, and then landed at Stern Pinball. And he didn't know any voiceover people, so he called me, and I did the voice of the Metallica pinball game. I'm the voice of the Aerosmith pinball game. I'm the voice of the Black Knight, where I pitched my voice down. That's me talking in the Black Knight. Um, and in that one also was a cool extra little challenge, which was how do we write the music or appropriate some of the cool music from the original Black Knight pinball game. So that was part of the thing is that Black Knight had a cool kind of synthesizer soundtrack, and so we kind of did it with guitars and then added a lot of little bits and pieces throughout the whole thing. But it was really fun just sitting here, and I was more of like I was programming drums and I was just handing Scott guitars. He played my Buckethead guitar that I used to have that was small, like all these different guitars, and I was just watching his right hand. So for me, it was like going to rhythm guitar school and watching Scott, who's I think one of the best heavy metal rhythm guitar players, and also I think he's one of the guys that invented the genre, really. Um, but we had a lot of fun. That was like a really fun time. We've collaborated on a bunch of little different things, throughout the years. And that was really cool. And we got some kind of an award for the music of that too, which was kind of
Right.
cool. Yeah, I have a little statue somewhere.
Yeah,
And
you have a machine, they give you one.
no, they didn't, but I'm supposed to be getting one soon because I just finished a couple other voices for. I just did the voice of the Led Zeppelin pinball game, and I did the Foo Fighters pinball game. So it's this really weird side hustle that I'm doing with voiceover and
Are
pinball,
you
and I just
are you
yeah.
like mimicking these guys' voices, or are you just using a voice?
I'm using like basically like normally what I'm doing the majority is I'm some kind of like dunk tank asshole who's chastising you when you miss a ball or something
Uh,
like that. So it's that kind of thing, where I'm like some kooky, obnoxious character.
Gotcha. I was
And
gonna
I
put you on the
did
spot for
that.
like a Robert Plant impression, but
It wasn't a Robert Plant. By the way, this is the funniest story: is that I did the Led Zeppelin thing, and we were kind of like our initial idea was to go like kind of silly and screwy and chastising. And I was like, I don't think Led Zeppelin's gonna like this, but let's send them a version of this anyway. And they did. And I got notes back from Robert Plant, collective from Robert Plant, from Jimmy Page, and from John Paul Jones.
mm.
And the message was, "We detest this."
Go a different
And
direction.
and I was like, I agree with Led Zeppelin on this one. So let me do like a more kind of like calmer, kind of like just more of like a BBC kind of a voice that
some tame stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep you too long. I know you're probably doing press for the rest of the day. I don't. How much time you got left?
I don't know what I have left today
Because we're
but
running about like an hour, so I just wanted to make sure.
yeah, I've got. Well, you know what I have to do? I have to go back and I have to finish preparation for the concert that I'm about to do. So we're kind of doing some nipping and tucking of our timeline because we played a picture when we play live, and so we have some new stuff that we're going to be doing and some legacy stuff that we're going to be doing. So I'm going to go back to this guy Brian Weeder, who I mentioned is a compositor. He's who worked on the movie with me. So I've got to get off of this Zoom and go talk to him because we only have so much time. Because I got 2 weeks and then I go into rehearsals and then I'm on the road.
All right, well then we'll wrap it up. I just want to ask you one final question here. Is that a Weinreimer behind you? Is that the kind of dog it is?
Yeah, that's Gilda, and she is asleep right now, and she's elderly.
Yeah, I got a 12-year-old boxer, so I'm with the old dogs.
Yeah. She's I wish she could come on the road with me because she's like my emotional support pet. All pets are emotional support pets, but there she is. Now she's awake.
She heard us talking about you. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, she loves hanging out in here because she can't hear anyway. So when I'm playing loud guitars or screaming vocals or doing whatever, she's just like sleeping and
she can feel it. There's a little bit of vibrations in the air.
There's a little bit of vibration, yeah. She'll get excited.
Cool. Well, Brandon, I appreciate your time, man. And the movie's awesome. The reviews, we reviewed it. The guys loved it. We're putting that up today or tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. I know you're really going to love the comment section on that, probably.
Sure, yeah.
Well, and I want to ask, I know Dylan brought it up earlier, but what was there a specific website maybe that you were trying that influenced the topic of like not reading the comments on or Metalocalypse or Dethklok not reading the comments?
No, I mean to me that scene that you're talking about comes out of character, and it also comes out of the ego. This character is going through an egomaniacal crisis, right?
Okay.
So Nathan Explosion, is in a professional and romantic flat spin when he is asked to write this song that may or may not save the world. So being creative under emotional duress, I think, is a really interesting thing. Like I said, I mean, I just told you a story about being robbed and then having to go on stage.
Exactly.
And like, how do you make it all work? So that's something that I think is real, and I think it's funny. And it's also this guy has to like get over his ego. And that's like a big, final, huge thing. That's part of what this show is about, is the ego, the celebrity, who you are versus who people think you are, all that stuff. So there wasn't one particular thing. In fact, like I sit there and I'll write up like, it's something like TMZ or it's something like this or that or whatever. And but it's everywhere. There's like, there is a real tactile in this world of our movie, there's a real crazy push and pull between the fans and the band.
Yeah.
And it's this really complicated relationship. And it's a little bit of toxic fandom, and it's toxic bandom too. Like, so they're both toxic towards each other, and it's a really crazy thing. So it makes sense in the narrative to kind of have that moment and have it just sting and let the music really hurt him,
Yeah. I love both of those terms, toxic fandom and bandom. I think I'll start using those. I'll give you credit, though, when and if I do.
It's your take.
Brandon, thank you for your time. I know you're a busy man. The movie's awesome. Dethklok is awesome. You really, I mean, again, I know I said it earlier, you pulled it off in like a magical fashion. So
Nice.
I appreciate you giving that to the world, and I appreciate you being on the show. Dylan, if you want to say anything before we get out of here.
Yeah, Brendan's just the same thing, man. Love what you do. Keep doing it, and look to hear from you guys more. So,
thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Have a good one, bro.
It means a lot for you guys to say that. I hope to see you on the road somewhere.
Oh, well, we'll make it apparent if we're there.
All right, cool.
Take it easy,
Awesome,
man.
guys.